long time, and the toughest set of reforms to secure the border ever.
House Speaker Mike Johnson says the bill, though, is dead on arrival in his chamber. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day right now, 61 points. The NASDAQ's been down all day right now by about 16 points. And our KSL weather looks like snow will be moving in by the end of the week. That's next. KSL News Time 101.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the nines, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Valentine's Day is here. This year, give the ultimate gift. Name a star after your sweetheart. This is Rocky Moselle with International Star Registry. For 45 years, we've named millions of stars for celebrities, dignitaries, and individuals worldwide. For $59 and a call to 800-282-3333 or visit starregistry.com, you can give the most memorable gift. The star you name will be recorded in book form in the U.S. Copyright Office. Visit starregistry.com or call 800-282-3333.
If you only have a 401k, you're not getting the most for retirement.
Wait, what?
Add a Robinhood IRA on top, then they'll boost it by 3%.
You can do that?
And if you transfer in any retirement account, you get 3% on top of that.
Is there a limit to the match?
No limit. Robinhood Gold gets you the biggest contribution match of any IRA on the market. Sign up for Robinhood Gold at Robinhood.com/boost by April 30th. Subscription fees apply.
Investing involves risk. 3% match requires gold for 1 year from first match. Must keep IRA for 5 years. Match on transfers subject to additional terms and conditions. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC.
Stop for a moment and think about this. Do you know how much money in your 401k or IRA is actually yours? Or will the government take a bigger chunk than you thought? Remember, you still might owe taxes on that money. But do you have a plan to help make sure you don't pay more than you should? At Capital Wealth Advisors, we believe you deserve to keep more of what you've earned, which is why we're here to help you navigate the confusing world of retirement taxes. It's your money. You deserve to know what's at stake. Right now, taxes are historically low, but they won't be this low forever. So call the Capital Wealth Advisors team today so you don't miss out on this opportunity. 801-210-5500. That's 801-210-5500. You work hard for your money, and we'll work just as hard to help you keep it. Capital Wealth Advisors, 801-210-5500. Advisory services offered through Capital Wealth Advisors, LLC, a state of Utah registered investment advisor. Firm may not give tax advice.
Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates this weekend only. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Advanced Window Products. Factory direct. Affordable windows. Call today. They're on their way. Financing available. Save now, pay later. AdvancedWindows.com.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
This crash in Taylorsville, it's northbound on I-215's West Belt, but it's right in the bend as you're passing Redwood Road, making your way going northbound on the West Belt, and it has been affecting a couple of lanes of travel. In the Clinton area, police activity, authorities asking you to avoid the area of 1600 North, 2900 West. Lagoon is looking for ride maintenance technicians. Lagoon offers excellent mechanical training programs with amazing career opportunities. Ride maintenance technician position is full-time and year-round. Details, visit lagoonpark.com/jobs. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we've reached a high of 54 today, and that will only go down through the rest of the week when we see valley rain and mountain snow coming along. We could get up to 20 inches of snow in some high mountain areas. Snow could reach the valley floors by Friday. Right now, again, 54 degrees and mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, the headlines have been centered on the fact that Democrats and Republicans have pontificated and postured and positioned themselves. They've rallied for and raged against immigration reform, border security. They've been doing it for decades now, but very loudly over the last 6 months. And now, after all that, all the hype, all the hoopla, all the posturing for political purposes, we the people are once again in the spot where, after all is said and done, much more has been said than has actually been done. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
So as we continue to follow the happenings in our nation's capital, it appears now that the bipartisan deal that was crafted in the Senate will not make it over to the House because there simply aren't enough votes to get it over to the House. We'll break that down just a little bit when we come up at 1:20. But I want to start with President Biden's speech today. It was a speech that was anticipated and then delayed for about almost 2 hours late getting started there. There were some components to the president's speech that were politically predictable. There were some things that were actually pretty compelling, where I think the president got it right. There were some things that were downright odd, and I think a few White House staff writers should be fired. And then there's the big question, now what? And so let's break all of that down. Let's start with the first part of the president's speech. He touted some of the provisions in the bill, from increasing the funding for border resources, asylum judges, the resolution that gives the president authority to shut down the border, a very complicated one. Sounds nice as a bumper sticker. He said this is about the end result, though, of the long process of negotiating and ultimately getting to legislation.
Bottom line is, this bipartisan bill is a win for America because it makes important fixes to our broken immigration system. And it's the toughest, fairest law that's ever been proposed relative to the border.
So the president went through some of those components. Again, some of those things that I think are good, that can be helpful to actually securing the border and changing the state of play down there. That's important. And then remember that this bill isn't solely a border security bill. In fact, that's the smallest portion of the bill. The big part of the bill is Ukraine funding and aid for Israel. So the president spoke on the provisions in the bill that fund Israel, that help and provide aid and support and assistance for Ukraine. He emphasized the need to pass additional funding for the Ukrainian war effort against Russia.
This bill would also address two other important priorities. First, it provides urgent funding for Ukraine. We can't walk away now. That's what Putin's betting on. As I said before, the stakes on this fight extend well beyond Ukraine. For those Republicans in Congress who think they can oppose funding for Ukraine and not be held accountable, history is watching. The failure to support Ukraine at this critical moment will never be forgotten.
I actually think the president's right on that point. I do think that history is watching, especially when it comes to Ukraine and to Israel. That funding does matter. Vladimir Putin continues his march and continues to not back down in any way, shape, or form, and will continue to prosecute that against Ukraine and his efforts to take it over. And then there's no doubt about it, he'll continue to march that forward. And I think that's one of the interesting things that we've learned. And if you look at history, since the president referenced history, those that are thugs and dictators and bad guys, they tend to tell you what they're going to do. They're pretty transparent folks. And so you better believe them when they say they're on the march. And so I think the president did sound an important message there. And so the interesting thing to me, beyond the border issue on this particular speech from the president, is what does this do in setting in motion anything around particularly aid to Ukraine and support for Ukraine? Will there be a standalone Ukraine bill? Will there be a Ukraine-Israel bill? Or what's the next step there? I think that's part of what the president was hedging on. He didn't want to talk about it afterwards. He said he would come back and speak on Thursday. He wanted to let the process play out in the United States Senate, which I think is the right thing for the president to do. But he clearly seems to be angling and positioning that we need to do something swiftly for Ukraine and Israel aid. And so that will be an interesting thing to see if Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell start a process there for some funding for Ukraine and Israel. Now, on the House side, we already know that a number of Democrats have lined up their opposition to something that not only is not a bill or legislative text, it's barely an idea. And that is just doing this standalone bill. And there's a number of Democrats who have come out already on the House side saying we will oppose, we will stand against anything that is a standalone bill with aid to Israel and Ukraine. So we're already seeing the flip side of the coin in terms of what's coming on the political front. President Biden definitely went in full on as it relates to the political side of all of this as he framed the deal. He positioned the failure to be at one spot and one spot only, at the feet of his potential rival in the presidential, former President Donald Trump.
But if the bill fails, I want to be absolutely clear about something. The American people are going to know why it failed. Every day between now and November, the American people are going to know that the only reason the border is not secure is Donald Trump and his MAGA Republican friends.
So that was the pure politics of it all. And so the president's clearly going to stake out that position. Of course, the former president's going to use that position and say he's not serious about fixing the border, and that's what he will do as president. And so the politics of it all will just continue to move forward there. I will make a couple of quick comments just in terms of the context of the speech. There were some portions of it that I thought were very strong and delivered very well from the president. There were also some real head scratchers. You had the president of the United States justifying his position based on headlines in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or something else that he'd read online. And I don't care what political party you're in, the president of the United States does not have to justify their thoughts and their opinion based on a headline from a media company. They are the president of the United States. The president should have just declared it. This is what I think, and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, you should print that as a headline. Finally, the president exhorted lawmakers to move past the politics of it all and actually get something done together. And as he was doing that, the president said that it is time for us to really take this issue on head on. And to move it forward, and that will be the next test. We'll see what happens in the next 24 hours. When we come back from the break, we're going to stay with the conversation, and we'll look at what that path forward looks like, what gets left on the cutting room floor, and what the possibility is of moving it forward. Coming up next.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Our lives are full of choices these days.
Some are less important.
Look at all these shows and movies. I don't know what to watch.
But other choices are key to the way we understand the world and our place in it.
When you select KSL, listening on Alexa or in the car,
You've made the right choice.
you could choose to do nothing. You could opt out.
So thank you for engaging, for choosing this station.
KSL News Radio.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors, and I'm proud to tell you we don't lay off employees when things get tough. During the pandemic, we didn't let one of our installers go. Instead, we had them clean and remodel our offices so they could still get paid. Remember the 2008 housing crisis? It was a financial nightmare for even the biggest contractors. Still, we didn't lay off a single worker. Nope, we sacrificed profits to keep paying everyone. Look, when the economy's down, most contractors are quick to lay off their workers. It's the easiest way to save money when times get tight. But at RGS Exteriors, we're loyal to our people. You know why? Because it's the right thing to do. People first. People always. That's the RGS way. For gutters, siding, windows, and more, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit rgsexteriors.com. That's rgsexteriors.com, 801-280-3110.
I'm so stressed. It's a brand new year and our business is busier than ever.
Ooma.
What is that? Meditation?
I'm recommending the Ooma cloud phone system with auto attendant and more than 35 features.
Ooma?
Yep. Switching to Ooma is a cinch. Starts at $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Now you're feeling it. Visit Ooma.com. That's OOMA.com to learn more. Ooma. Smart communications for the smarter business.
Hey, Joe Montana here. Back in my football days, I knew the importance of a strong defense. Now I'm sharing how you can help defend your health against pneumococcal pneumonia, a bacterial lung disease that can be life-threatening. If you're 65 or older, or 19 or older with certain chronic conditions like diabetes or asthma, you're at increased risk. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist about vaccination and learn more at knowpneumonia.com. That's KNOW pneumonia.com.
Sponsored by Pfizer. New home for the new year? Sounds nice, doesn't it? What about new lowered rates? Now's the time to step into a gorgeous new Nilsson home with less commute times, easy access, and with rates that have dropped more significantly than all year. Less really is more in this case. Less maintenance, less commute, and less money per month. Move north with Nilsson Homes. Choose from beautiful townhomes to Rambler communities for all stages of life. Most of all, Nilsson Homes are move-in ready and close to what you love and enjoy with easy commutes. Nilsson Homes has been building across the Wasatch Front for over 45 years, accommodating all the things you need, combined with the things you love. Make sure to ask about end-of-year promotional savings. Experience your new home for the new year. Visit Nilsson Homes Communities at nilssonhomes.com. NILSON homes.com. That's nilssonhomes.com.
Hi, I'm Henry Winkler. My eyes are very important to me. My eyes connect me with things I love. I loved my late father-in-law dearly. He always lit up a room, but his vision dimmed with age. He had age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. And since partnering with Apellis, I've learned there's an advanced form of the disease called geographic atrophy, or GA. His struggle with vision loss made me want to help others know about GA's warning signs. For some, straight lines seem wavy, like when looking at a door frame. For others, blurry or missing spots can make it hard to read or see loved ones' faces. Many have trouble seeing in low light, making driving at night difficult. GA gets worse over time and cannot be reversed. If you've been diagnosed with AMD and notice vision changes, don't wait. Talk to your eye doctor about GA today. Learn more at GAWon'tWait.com. That's GAWon'tWait.com.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, UDOT has saved some money in its snowplow budget this winter. That could be used for other projects in the spring. Second, teachers who want to carry weapons at school could be certified under a new program for guardians. It's moving through the legislature. Third, President Biden says a good compromise on immigration is being held up by Republicans doing the bidding of Donald Trump. Right now, 54 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and we're staying with the conversation just a little bit as we watch things continue to kind of fall apart and then get reconstituted when it comes to the bill in the Senate that would deal with both border security and with funding for Ukraine, Israel, amongst a few other things that got thrown in at the last minute. And so as we break it down and we listen to the words of the president, I do think the president had some good points in his speech. I thought there were some real head scratchers in terms of kind of demeaning the office of the president, in terms of the way he was justifying some of his actions by headlines in media outlets. The president of the United States from either party does not have to do that and say, hey, you should believe me because, look, this New York Times or Wall Street Journal or Washington Post agrees with me. That's not the way it should work. They don't need to do that. But it's an interesting thing that they chose to go there. So anyway, as the president moved it forward, of course, there was the political posturing, and he's going to blame all of it at the feet of the former president. That's going to be the political issue. And, of course, the former president will do exactly the same thing and lay it at the feet at the current president. And that's going to be what we're going to see for the next few months. So we'll continue to watch that. The bigger question, though, is how do we move forward? What's the real next step? We're still at this, after all is said and done, more is said than done in Washington. And I think we, the people, deserve to have some things done that need to be done. Not everything needs to be done. There's a lot of things that members of both sides of the political aisle would love to do, but that doesn't necessarily mean they should do. But there are a few things, and interestingly, immigration, border security, and funding the government are things that they're actually supposed to do. So we should have those conversations. Both the Democrat and the Republican Senate leaders gave their thoughts to the press after the president spoke earlier today. Mitch McConnell spoke to the concerns that Republicans have that this bill would have zero chance to become law, even if it got passed in the Senate and moved over to the House.
I think in the end, even though the product was approved by the Border Council that endorsed President Trump, most of our members feel that we're not going to be able to make a law here. And if we're not going to be able to make a law, they're reluctant to go forward.
Mitch McConnell went on to say and to endorse moving forward with the rest of the bill. This is where it gets interesting. So he says specifically we need to make sure that the aid to Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, that all of that moves forward in some form or fashion, whether that's a standalone bill, whether it's wrapped up in something else. He said ultimately, though, that's not his job as the minority leader. He's going to pass that buck and that baton over to his colleague, Democratic leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer.
We still, in my view, ought to tackle the rest of it because it's important. Not that the border isn't important, but we can't get an outcome. So that's where I think we ought to head. It's up to Senator Schumer to decide how to repackage this if, in fact, we don't go on to it.
So that's going to be an interesting thing to see what Chuck Schumer decides to do next. That will be the big test, whether he forces a vote. And everything we're hearing seems to sense that he is going to at least force the Republicans to go on the record for the political talking point of voting against a border security bill. So Senator Schumer, in his own press conference, he called out the Republicans in the House for flip-flopping on their requirements to pass an aid package to Ukraine.
First, they say they can't pass Ukraine funding without border provisions. Now, they can't pass Ukraine funding with border provisions. Well, which one is it?
And I actually agree with Chuck Schumer on that. Doesn't happen all the time, but I agree with Chuck Schumer. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, hey, we can't address funding for Israel or for Ukraine unless we have border security done first. That was clearly where the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, began his time as Speaker of the House, saying we have to secure our own border first. We have to do something. And now he's saying, no, we need to break it apart. So I think Senator Schumer is right and justified in calling that out and saying, look, you can't have it both ways. Now, of course, that shoe goes on both feet on both sides of the political aisle. Schumer also promised an amendment process and true debate over the bill if they'll vote on it and not lose confidence tomorrow.
So, to the Republicans, we'll give you amendments. We will give you some time. Stay here as long as it takes. We feel it's so important. But go on the bill. Vote yes, and we can debate.
So let's just break that down a little bit. So what Senator Schumer is saying is in order to get onto the bill, you have to get not just 50 votes in the Senate, you have to get 60 votes. So you have to get to 60. So what Senator Schumer is saying, if you will vote to move on to the bill, then I will give you more time to read the bill. I'll give you some time to make amendments and offer amendments to the bill that we can vote on. So he's saying just vote yes on getting onto the bill, Republicans, and I'll take care of you on the back end. I'll let you have time and let you have an amendment process. Now, I was in Washington just long enough to know that is never how it actually plays out in the end. And it doesn't matter whether it's a Republican or a Democrat in charge. They say, just vote for it, we get onto it, because then you have to think about the back end of the bill. And the back end, you only have to get to 50. So then you don't need anyone else's help. So the Democrats could pass that because they have enough votes. Plus, if needed, they could call on the vice president to cast a deciding vote if it were split 50-50. And so often that's the challenge, and it's one of the things that often when you hear a filibuster or that they're blocking a bill, what they're saying is, hey, I'm not going to vote to get on it because I know once we're on it, then it's over, and that will be the end of it. And so there's some interesting jockeying going on there as well. The lead Senate negotiator for the Democrats, Chris Murphy, was visibly angry and frustrated during the press conference following the president's speech and following the Republicans' response. He said this week has been very disheartening to him. He said, but it is important to have a vote tomorrow just so that everyone can know where people stand.
One of my colleagues just a moment ago said that this is maybe the most dispiriting week that he has had since he came to Washington. So I think all of us are grasping for the path forward here. I think it's important to have the vote tomorrow so the American people can see, where do you stand? Do you want to fix the border, or do you want to keep the border a mess in order to help Donald Trump?
And so that's really going to be the talking point, and it will be really interesting to see where things go tomorrow. And again, we've got about 24 hours until that would be scheduled to be placed on the floor of the Senate for a vote. Again, to move on to the bill, got to get to 60 to make all of that begin. Currently, the Republicans now that were very fractured have now seemed to unite around the idea that, no, we're not going to go down this path. As Senator McConnell laid it out, there's no chance for this to become law, so we can't make law here. So let's move on to something else. Mitch McConnell clearly is most focused and most interested in the aid package portion of all of this to Israel and Ukraine and Taiwan. That's what he wants to get to. And so it'll be very interesting to see the conversations going on between Mitch McConnell and Senator Chuck Schumer. Because those two really hold the strings in terms of what gets to the floor and what comes next in all of this. My sense is that Chuck Schumer really wants to exact a price for Republicans not going along. So I think there will be a vote tomorrow, and that will go down, and then it will be the therefore what moment. What happens next? Will they move on to aid packages for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan? Will they continue to just go round and round as it relates to the border and to immigration? Or will they really start looking at what is it that we're supposed to be doing here? And I would make the case that there are some components in the bill that are things that Republicans and Democrats agree on. And there are many things in the bill that, like many bills that get crafted this way with a very small number of senators involved in the process, there's often a lot of things that sound right, but if you poke it once, there's a whole lot underneath it that just doesn't add up. And so that's always the test of these. And so one thing I would love to see is I would love to see both sides who weren't in the room where it happened, weren't one of the three negotiators for the deal. I'd love to see the rest of the senators go to task. Put this in the committee. Put it in with things that are happening on the Judiciary Committee and do a markup. That's actually called regular order. And go through it all line by line and point it out. This says this but does this. Let's fix it. This says this, does that. Let's fix it. It all can be done. It's not a matter of skill power. It's a matter of political willpower. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour: classrooms could get panic buttons like bank tellers have if lawmakers approve a plan to beef up school security in Utah. Details from KSL News Radio's Don Brinkerhoff.
The bill sponsored by Representative Ryan Wilcox makes several changes to security protocols in Utah schools. One of those changes adds panic alert devices and training in the appropriate use of those devices to every classroom throughout the state. But the bill does not specify where the money to pay for those devices would come from.
Implementing the bill would cost about $5 million a year over the next 2 years. Our top national story this hour from ABC News: Jennifer Crumbley has been found guilty today on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter after giving her son the gun that he used to carry out a mass shooting at his high school. ABC's Trevor Auld is outside the court in Pontiac, Michigan.
It was very clear during the jury selection process. I mean, we're in an area of Michigan. This is in Pontiac. We're about 45 minutes north of Detroit or so. This is an area where there is a pretty heavy gun culture. It is part of a lot of people's lives, and that's the case for a lot of members of the jury. A lot of these people have grown up around weapons. A lot of them have weapons themselves. A lot of them, their parents had weapons, but they would frequently lock them up. And that was clearly key here.
Looking at your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average is up on the day right now, 51 points, while the NASDAQ is down 21. And our KSL weather, the rain will start this evening and continue through the rest of the week, turning into snow after a while. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Hi, this is Doug Wright. Over the years, I've talked a lot about hard water. It takes years off the life of water heaters and other appliances in your home. Leaves scum on the shower walls, and you almost need a jackhammer to remove that. I've talked about how Kinetico of Utah, an authorized Kinetico dealer, their water softeners are maintenance-free. You just don't need adjustment, and they do the job with 2/3 less salt than other softeners. But today, I want to talk about the exhilarating feeling of stepping into a hot bath or shower and feeling that pure, soft water cascade over your skin. It feels like every pore in your body wants to stand up and start singing. And afterward, there are no itchy hard water deposits sticking all over you. You really should look into a soft water system from Kinetico of Utah, an authorized Kinetico dealer. You can learn more about Kinetico by giving them a call at 801-576-8600 or log on to Softwater Utah. Kinetico of Utah, an authorized Kinetico dealer. Then sit back and enjoy your shower even more.
Tuacahn Amphitheater 72-hour ticket sale is here. From February 6th to the 8th, you can save big. This is the first time to save on individual show tickets. When you buy a ticket of any of Tuacahns 5 never-before-seen Broadway shows this season, you'll get the second one at up to 50% off. You can also get access to the brand new cushioned seats in rows A through O before they're sold out. Just use promo code 72radio at checkout. Traverse across Europe in Anastasia. Let it go in Disney's Frozen. And follow the rise of Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons in Jersey Boys, featuring a new PG-rated script. Indoors, be inspired by the songs of Johnny Cash in Ring of Fire. And catch the holiday spirit with Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. Take advantage of this once-a-year sale before it's gone. Visit tuacahn.org and use code 72radio at checkout. That's tuacahn.org.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We are back to good speeds on all of the Valley freeways. Be aware if you're traveling Draper, 13th East at Highland Drive at that intersection is a flashing light, and it will remain flashing at that intersection until about the 12th, and that's due to workers doing repair work in the area. Treat that as a four-way stop. The UACPA supports certified professional accountants in Utah through ongoing professional education and leadership development to help them succeed in an ever-changing financial world. Find a CPA that's right for you at uacpa.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, we'll see valley rain and mountain snow along the Wasatch Front this afternoon and evening, and that will continue through the day tomorrow with up to 20 inches of snow in our highest mountain areas. Snow could reach the valley floors by Friday. Right now, we're at 53 degrees with cloudy skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. And as we continue to follow all the happenings of the day, we're looking a little bit at the presidential race and what is not going on. And currently, the president, of course, did make a speech today and talked about what was happening with the border security bill and immigration bill, along with the aid package that was tucked in with that as well. And now we want to take a look kind of from the campaign side a little bit. But what is the president really doing in terms of speaking up, showing up, and speaking out? He's hit some things on the campaign trail all across the country. But when it comes to the big ticket items, the president's been a little bit absent from what's been going on. A fabulous piece at Politico today. Adam Cankren, of course, White House correspondent for Politico, helps us break all of that down. And Adam, welcome back to the show. And you pointed out in your piece today that there have been some pretty big ticket items where the president has just been a little bit noted for his absence rather than his presence.
Hey, Bud, thanks for having me. And you're right. It has been a pretty consequential last week. I mean, just as a short list, I mean, we had the retaliatory airstrikes against the Iranian proxies after the 3 American soldiers were killed. We had the South Carolina Democratic primary. We had a great jobs report. Obviously, a border deal that was unveiled and quickly seems to be headed toward rejection. All this happened at the same time that Joe Biden was, for much of it, on the West Coast, doing campaign swings, not at the White House, not kind of, physically involved in a lot of this stuff going on. So a bit of a striking split screen there. It doesn't mean that he hasn't been updated on this, but just that, as all of this is going on, we're really not seeing a ton of him out front governing, rather just more on the campaign side, doing those kinds of events.
Yeah. And walk us through that a little bit. We always love to look at it on this show from kind of the communication strategy standpoint. And you have both, of course, the operations, the White House communication strategy. You have the campaign communication strategy. And as you well know, those are often at odds with each other as things go along. What are some of the risks in this strategy for the president, both in terms of governing, but then also in terms of campaigning?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the core of this really is the reality that we're facing the longest, essentially, general election campaign in modern history. I mean, it is effectively started even if the primaries aren't over. And presidents don't normally have to worry about juggling governing and campaigning until, maybe late spring, summer. And so what you're seeing here is, just the reality of having to do both at once. And what it means is, when something happens like the border bill is getting hammered out over the weekend, and the president has already committed to doing campaign events in Nevada, the next primary state, it means a lot of delegation. The risk there is that it can look like the president is disengaged, especially for Biden, who is already trying to battle these concerns that he's too old, that he's not kind of fit for the presidency for another term. It's a major concern. On the other hand, I mean, there's a lot of urgency to make sure that he is doing the retail politicking, going and meeting voters in these states that are going to be super important by the time we get to November.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting to look at some of the choices are so interesting to me. As you mentioned, he's on one hand kind of risking that feeling that, hey, is he not just out of sight, but is he there? Is he really in control? I think is one interesting component you pointed out in your piece. Also, more on the lighter side, it's sort of become standard fare that presidents of both political parties show up to do the sit-down interview before the Super Bowl. And now that that's not happening, of course, that opens it up for all the conspiracy theories and all of those things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one important thing I think to note is that all of this these are conscious decisions that the White House is making. They're not mistakes, right? And so, you mentioned the Super Bowl interview. That's one where traditionally, presidents for the most part have done it in the past. This White House says, one, it's an interview that's morphed from what used to be a lighthearted, kind of humanizing opportunity for the president into more of a hard news session, right? That's almost indistinguishable from any other television sit-down interview he's going to do. Secondly, there's kind of feeling that, especially in a long campaign year, the last thing voters really want when they sit down on Sunday is to be seeing more politics.
Right.
And so the decision was made, one, the value for the president in reaching voters just isn't as much as it might have been in past years. And actually it may do damage in terms of, just exhausting people further. And that's the case for a lot of these things. You're seeing this kind of attempt to balance okay, what does the president really need to spend his time on? Where does he really need to be in person? And then where, as an alternative, can they kind of handle things, rely on aides and staff and lawmakers in Congress to handle the nitty-gritty of things on the ground?
Yeah. And you mentioned kind of that on the ground, the nitty-gritty stuff. Of course, they had Jim Clyburn doing the political side of things in South Carolina, kind of taking the victory speech and putting the president in on speakerphone just to do that. But there's also the governing side where I think they end up with some missed opportunities. You mentioned the jobs report, some good numbers in terms of the economy, and the president not being out front there. Again, does that just leave a void and a vacuum in terms of shaping and framing that message in terms of what's getting done on the governing side?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a concern. You take the jobs report, really just a blowout jobs report. Great news for the White House. And obviously, they've had the various surrogates, right? You have senior White House officials that go on all the networks and they talk about it. But yeah, I mean, there are cases where you can make the argument that it's important to hear from the president. I'll give you one example. Earlier today, the president went out, spoke about this border and national security bill. Really made a hard pitch for it, blamed Donald Trump for, the collapse in support on the Republican side. It's the kind of bully pulpit moment, right, that you talk to some Democrats and they say, we really need to see more of the president doing so that, people see him in control, in charge. On the other hand, the pushback I've gotten, especially from White House officials, is a lot of that stuff, the national press cares about it, but the voters who are really going to matter, they're paying more attention to local coverage, regional coverage, what people in their lives are saying. And so they're not seeing a lot of this really high-level type stuff that we pay attention obsessively to.
Yeah. And then finally, the president really has made that decision. Presidents and their campaigns always are battling time, attention, and energy. Those are always the thing that the candidate and the president, again, two very different roles that they take on, has a limited quantity of all of those things. And as you pointed out, they seem to be making the tack that it is more important for the president's time, attention, and energy to be more in that retail politicking space to make sure he's making the connections on the campaign trail as opposed to weighing in on all of the different issues of the day.
Yeah, and I think you'll see more and more of this as we get closer to November. One of the things his advisors have really concluded is that Biden is at his strongest, not as a public speaker really, but as a retail politician. The kinds of, handshake and small talk type things. And, if you pay attention, you'll see that this is actually a pattern that's repeating now in his campaign stops. So a lot of times there will be one set piece, right? Whether it's a rally or whether it's a meeting with a union. And then in addition, there's some smaller stop, maybe at a restaurant. And that's kind of an opportunity to kind of meet and mingle with people, right? Yeah. And what it also creates is all of this kind of digital footage, right, that can then be repurposed into ads, put online, goes viral, that kind of thing. So it's a multi-tiered strategy here for the White House.
Yeah, great insight as always. Adam Cancrin, White House correspondent for Politico. Great piece at Politico.com. Adam, thanks for joining us today.
Anytime. Thanks, Boyd.
All right. Great perspective there in terms of the strategy the president's taking, both on the governing side and the political side. We'll be right back.
The recent spring preview was nice.
Temperatures extra warmer in the 50s again today.
But it is February.
Snow showers at the valley floor on Friday.
When winter makes a comeback, come here.
We have you covered.
With traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the 9s.
On KSL News Radio.
Maybe Washington didn't ski. Maybe Lincoln didn't shred. Okay, could be, but I know they'd have no objections to you taking a run in their honor. So get ready. President's Weekend at Bear Lake is simply the best of Utah and the best place to celebrate our president's big days. You'll uncover 3 of the most beautiful cross-country and snowshoeing trails in Utah. Or jump into a snowmobile and catch some awesome trails and over 350 miles of backcountry snowmobiling. No matter how you like your winter sports, Bear Lake is ready, and President's Weekend is the perfect time to celebrate. So pack up the family and play your way. And when you choose President's Day to play in the snow, you'll find family-friendly getaway and lodging deals, too. Start at bearlake.org and learn more about President's Day at Bear Lake. BearLake.org. Lodging, activities, family events, even ice fishing. It's winter at its best, all at Bear Lake. Visit BearLake.org for details. BearLake.org.
Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates this weekend only. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit HotTubAndSwimSpaSale.com.
It's the dead of winter, and our friends at Advanced Window Products have a wonderful wintertime offer. This is Jeff Kaplan. If the cold is seeping into your house right now, Nate and Jake will give you $2,500 off on double-pane windows and the highest quality custom frames built right here in Utah. Any style, any color, and the $2,500 is atop their already low prices. See, they build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. So there's no middleman markup. At Advanced Window Products, they offer 0% financing. You can save now, pay later, so take advantage in the dead of winter while the wind is whistling and give your home, your number one asset, a fresh new look. Plus, you save money on heating and air conditioning, so much so the energy companies offer rebates. Buy local. Their factories right here in Salt Lake City. Save an extra $2,500 off the best windows and frames in Utah. 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100 or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
Let's face it, nothing makes you look older than you really are than thinning hair. But what if you could not only increase your hair count, but promote new hair growth without surgery, without drugs with potential side effects, and without a prescription from your doctor? Well, now you can, thanks to a breakthrough new supplement called Hair Grow, provided by New Nordic, the #1 supplier of dietary supplements in Europe. Hair Grow is now available in the U.S. Only Hair Grow contains Tocogaya, a powerful antioxidant that has received a U.S. patent. Multiple clinical studies show Hair Grow is safe and effective in promoting new hair growth. In one study, 95% of the patients using Hair Grow saw increased hair count. Don't lose more time and more hair. Try Hair Grow today to feel and look your best. Just go to NewNordicUSA.com or visit Walgreens or Amazon to purchase. Look younger and feel more confident with Hair Grow by New Nordic at NewNordicUSA.com.
David Dujanovic here. You hear us every weekday on KSL from 9 to noon.
But have you listened to our podcast?
We're running a secret contest just for podcast listeners.
You could win a new pair of AirPod Pros every week in February just for listening.
Here's how you do it. Find our show on KSLPodcast.com
or wherever you listen to podcasts and listen for the keywords.
When you hear one, text it to 57500 and you'll be in to win.
That's it. We'll see you on our podcast, David Dujanovic with KSL News Radio.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, teachers would have panic buttons in their classrooms under a bill moving through the legislature. Second, Salt Lake City police say violent crime is way down in the Ballpark neighborhood, but residents say other crimes have gone up. And third, the mother of a school shooter has been convicted of manslaughter by a court in Michigan. Right now, 53 degrees and cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson, and as we round out hour number one, we've spent quite a bit of time in this first hour talking about what has happened as it relates to the bill that was crafted by a small group of senators, a Republican, a Democrat, and an Independent, and was presented late on Sunday evening. and will still likely be voted on tomorrow in the Senate, but it seems there is no path forward at this moment, though things can change, so we'll continue to watch it. We also had a really fascinating conversation around what the president said today and how he said it. I thought he said some things that were spot on and some policy components that I think are important for everybody in the country. And there were a lot of things that were just purely political in terms of how he went about it. And then if you missed it in our last segment, we had Adam Cancron on from Politico, and he had a wonderful piece talking about President Biden's communication strategy. And as you all know, I love to take a look at that and break it down and pick it apart and see what that means and what that looks like. And there are some things where President Biden has clearly chosen to step back and not be more of a voice and a front and center person, even on things where he could claim some victories, like the jobs report last week. He very much absent. He won the South Carolina primary on Saturday and was not there. Had Jim Clyburn of South Carolina give the victory speech. And so there were a number of things where they have clearly taken a tack of, we aren't going to communicate here. He's not going to do the traditional right before the Super Bowl sit-down interview, which I think has been a great interview for both Democrats and Republicans over the last few years. Now I can see why maybe they're thinking that there might be too many things to actually get to, so I get that. But it's all about how you communicate and how you connect with the American people. And so very interesting. If you missed that with Adam Cancron, you'll want to go later on this afternoon to the podcast, kslpodcast.com, and pick up that podcast. Listen to Adam. He has some tremendous insight just on the communication strategy of two parts. Remember, there's always two parts to this. There's the governing component, so the White House, the Office of the President communication strategy, and then there's the campaign strategy running for re-election. And as I often point out, those two communication camps are often at odds with one another, because things that the Office of the President would love to talk about, the campaign doesn't want to talk about. Things that the campaign wants to highlight, the office does not want to get into. And so there's always a little bit of a tension and a little bit of friction there. So that's interesting to see how presidents choose to navigate. And, of course, the president has the ultimate in bully pulpit, regardless of political party. How they use it is always interesting. Well, today's an interesting day to be talking about all of that because today is actually the 113th anniversary of the birth of one of those great communicator presidents, Ronald Reagan. So Ronald Reagan was born on this day 113 years ago. And I want to break down just a little bit of what Reagan did. Again, whether you loved his politics or hated his politics, he was a master communicator. And you can point to others who have done the same. But I think some of the interesting things from the Reagan era and how he chose to use communication was really interesting. And it's so different from what we're getting today. And I think it's worth highlighting. One of the things that Ronald Reagan pointed out early in his presidency was that he really felt that his job was to stand up for the little guy. Now, that may sound like today's politics. That may sound like former President Trump circa 2016. That may sound like Joe Biden 2020. And it sounds like both of them 2024. No, I'm for the little guy. No, I'm for the little guy. Well, I think Ronald Reagan probably captured it better because his was a looking out for the little guy without a grievance agenda, without a divisive agenda. Reagan said, "We represent the forgotten American, that simple soul who goes to work, bucks for a raise, takes out insurance, pays for his kids' schooling, contributes to his church and charity, and knows there just ain't no such thing as a free lunch." And I really think that to Ronald Reagan, those Americans were never forgotten. That was what it was about. And so his communication style reflected that. He gave many speeches in all kinds of different settings, very strategic. That was his gift and his craft. He was good at that, and he leaned into that. But I think one of the things that made him interesting was that he really was this spark. He was trying to tap into where we were. Remember, coming out of the 70s, there was kind of the malaise that's often attributed under the Jimmy Carter administration, sometimes not rightly so, sometimes rightly so. But he said it was time for mourning in America. He said it was time to kind of shake off the doom and gloom of it all and have a different kind of conversation with the American people. And so when he came to office, even though there were neighborhoods that had rising crime, there were communities that were threatened by family breakdown, jobs hanging by a thread, children that couldn't go to college, all of those people, they were the ones who couldn't afford the gas and groceries because we had an energy crisis at the time. But Reagan chose very deliberately, very purposefully to stand with them and for them, not in a grievance moment, but in a forward-moving moment. And I think that was all the difference. So much of our communication today from both parties, who seem to be trying to outpopulist the other, but it's a populism that's unhinged, completely unhinged from any kind of vision. I've talked about it on this show before. We often reference it as the Boston to Philadelphia model. The Boston Tea Party was a grievance moment. They'd had it. Too much taxes, no representation. And so they did what Americans did. They protested. But if they had just protested, what is celebrated as the Boston Tea Party wouldn't have been a footnote in history. One more angry mob yelling at a big oppressive government. That's not news. That's not history. And so to those founders, it was about that populace looking out for the little guy with a forward vision of Philadelphia. It took those early colonists a long time to get from Boston to Philadelphia in 1787, where they put down in the Constitution, here's the vision for the little guy. Here's the vision for the way a country can work. Here's a way that we can actually get it done. And it's different. Ronald Reagan figured out how to tap into that. That it's not just what we're against, it's what we're for. And that's a different kind of populism. It's populism grounded, bound, and connected to principles. And those principles lead to really good policy discussions, debates, laws, and things that can make a difference. And so it takes that kind of innovation. It takes a different kind of vision to be able to do that. And especially in today's world where we have such a chasm of distrust between the American people and the government and those that are elected to public office, both parties seem just completely incapable of producing innovative solutions to a lot of our growing problems in the nation. And they don't seem very interested in even trying these days. And so to me, I think the real legacy we should be celebrating as we honor the birthday of Ronald Reagan today is that he had a kind of populism where both sides of the aisle could choose to stand with the right people, not just the elite, not just the wealthy, not just the well-connected, not the lawyers and lobbyists, not just those who live in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., but to stand with and stand for the people with principle and good policy. And I think that was the magic and the mystery of Ronald Reagan, was his ability to stand in that space. And that is a kind of populism, again, grounded in principle, determined to have a forward-moving vision, is what the country is in desperate need of on all fronts, from immigration to health care to education and beyond. But it's going to take a different kind of leader, and one that I hope we can find real soon. All right, we'll step aside for some top-of-the-hour news. Don't go anywhere. We got a big hour number 2 coming up next on Inside Sources. Stick around. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. Good afternoon. I'm Maria Shaleos. KSL's top story. Fewer voters would get ballots in the mail if a bill makes its way through the legislature. KSL News Radio's Alessandra Harris reports.
To prevent mail-in ballots from being thrown in the trash, this new bill would stop the ballots from being sent to voters who have not used them for at least 2 years. Voters who are removed from receiving the mail-in ballots would still be registered to vote. However, they would need to either cast their vote in person or request the the ballots to again be sent to their homes.
The bill's sponsor says he's still tweaking things and may change it to stop mail-in ballots only for those who do not use them for a presidential election. KSL's top national stories this half hour. A compromise bill to secure the border is still facing big challenges in the Senate.
It looks to me and to most of our members as if we have no real chance here to make a law.
That is Senator Mitch McConnell. Earlier today, President Biden accused some Republicans of changing their minds about the bill because former President Trump told them to. Other national stories KSL is following. GoFundMe says crowdfunding campaigns have raised $30 billion in the last 13 years. The company released data today saying 150 million have either sent or received money through the platform since it began. Taking a look at your money at this moment, the Dow ending the day up 141 points, sitting at 38,521. S&P 500, it's up by 11. NASDAQ up by 11 as well. Coming up, no break in the rain anytime soon. KSL weather is next. KSL News Time 2:01.
It's a priority for us at this station to bring you all sides of a story and to talk about the news fairly, completely.
Get all the facts and be really aware. Utah's Morning News with us, Tim and Amanda.
Weekday mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
So you're driving down the road and you see a guardrail. You ever wondered why we have them? Probably not, because they're usually next to a cliff or a dangerous bend. Your kids need guardrails too. Rules to keep them from activities and impulses that could hurt them, like underage marijuana misuse. It can change the way a brain develops, leading to higher dropout rates, memory loss, and more. Set guardrails. Have the talk about underage marijuana misuse today. Learn more at graymattersutah.org.
Guys, did you know your testosterone affects everything in your system, including how you feel and perform every day? Right now, Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City will check your testosterone for free. Knowing your T levels is the first step in understanding if you have low T. Your testosterone level impacts your energy, libido, sleep, weight, hair loss, mood, and even ED. Maintaining an appropriate T level can change your whole life. Most men start to see changes in their hormone levels in their 30s. Experience and results matter. So what are you waiting for? Get your T levels checked today by local, experienced, and trusted men's health experts. They've helped thousands of men since 2011. They're so confident they can help you, they even guarantee it. Call Revive today and schedule your free testosterone test, free exam, and free consultation. Call Revive Men's Health at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
The first time I tried to quit vaping, I told myself that it was like a mountain that I had to climb over. And once I got to the other side, it would be clear. But I couldn't make it over. What really got me to quit was my little sister. I saw her vaping. So I was back in the mountain, but this time she was up there with me. It's weird what you can do for others that you won't do for yourself.
Every attempt is part of your story to quit for good. Visit Kick It California today at kickitca.org.
God, I'm so stressed. It's a brand new year and our business is busier than ever.
Ooma.
What is that? Meditation?
I'm recommending the Ooma cloud phone system with auto attendant and more than 35 features.
Ooma?
Yep. Switching to Ooma is a cinch. Starts at $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Now you're feeling it. Visit Ooma.com. That's OOMA.com to learn more. Ooma. Smart communications for the smarter business.
Traffic and weather together. It's brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. What's happening, Ricky?
We do have an accident. It's out there to the west. It's westbound on the 21st South Freeway, SR 201, just east of the 202 junction. Also, remember for Davis County drivers in the Clinton area, ongoing police activity, asking you to avoid 1600 North, 2900 West in Clinton. Mr. Max buy one get one sale. Buy one suit for $299, get the second one for $100. Any style, any occasion, free alterations, and 9 locations. Mr. Mac, Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Valley rain, mountain snow continuing overnight and again tomorrow. Snow could reach the valley floor by Friday. Right now, 54 degrees under mostly cloudy skies in downtown Salt Lake City. I'm Maria Shilaos from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We are Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, they've said it once, they'll say it again. Americans are not happy with their choices for the 2024 presidential election as things seem to be shaping up in the face of the potential of a Biden-Trump 2.0 rematch. Voters are looking for other options, looking at the third parties, independents. Organizations like No Labels, of course, are pushing forward with all kinds of energy. As we look at all of that, the question is, will this just be one more round where everyone in the end chooses the lesser of two evils? Or are you saying there's a chance? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, we want to look a little under the headline of just the 2.0 potential rematch between President Biden and former President Trump. And someone who's taken a deep dive on that, Matt Welch, of course, is editor-at-large at Reason. Reason.com has a great piece at Reason.com today talking about how that presidential ballot might get a little more crowded and that we ought to start looking a little bit closer of how those poll questions are actually being asked and answered. And Matt, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me back.
Hey, let's dive into this. As we look at that, one of the first things you point out in your piece is the fact that the way these polls are often asked, it's a binary choice, and the reality is it could be a little crowded this year.
Oh, yeah. On almost no ballots in the entire country will there be just two names for president. Maybe in New York, maybe in Illinois. That's it. There's going to be Libertarian Party, as it has for the last several elections, are going to have at least 40 some odd state ballot names. They had all 50 plus District of Columbia on the last couple of elections. You're going to have Robert Kennedy Jr. Is confident about getting on all 50 states plus D.C. Whether he manages it is another question, but he's doing some preliminary stuff, right? No Labels has 14 states already, and they're trying to get to 32 when they decide whether they're going to actually run a candidate or not, which is kind of an open question. The Green Party will probably do more than they did last time. So there's going to be some people. Cornel West is already on a couple state ballots. Certainly Utah is going to have a crowded ballot already. So, yes, there's going to be other possibilities on there. And, you know, there can be years where there's a lot of names on the ballot, but it doesn't really matter. Kanye West ran last time, didn't make a big splash. But what's different is that RFK is polling at 19%. We haven't seen that in 30 years. Yeah. And really, for the first time since 2016, right? 2016 is very close, and then Trump wins, and a lot of Democrats and other people experience this as something close to a trauma. And that was a year in which third parties got combined 5.7% of the vote, which is kind of high in historically. And so the next three elections, 2018, 20, and 2022, were all really terrible for third party and independent candidates because people were kind of scared straight. It feels like this year right now, they're not scared straight at this moment. We'll see how that plays out. But as it speaks right now, as we speak, it looks pretty positive for third party and independent candidates.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting because it does, you often get to that fearful moment of the voter who says, well, it's either, you know, this or that, and so I have to choose one of those, otherwise I'm throwing my vote away. That's always kind of the argument there. The other thing that's always interesting to see is when it's a generic independent candidate, the numbers are usually quite high, but then once you actually stick a candidate in there, the numbers start to drop, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has proven that not to necessarily be the case this time around.
Yeah, and he's also, and you know, I have my many criticisms of RFK that are on the record, but he is by far the most favorably rated candidate among anyone who's running for president, whether it's Trump or Biden or Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis or other people, Americans have a positive view. Could be because the Kennedy name is more or less sainted and not everybody really knows where he's coming from, or it could be that people genuinely like him. So that is a little bit of a different thing. Generally, yes, it is true that Americans are, as they say, third party in the streets and then two party in the sheets. They tend to always overrate how much they really want a third party or say that they're dissatisfied and they're really this time going to vote for somebody else. When it comes to election day, they don't. I mean, to the extent to which, if it's the day before the election and someone is polling at 5%, and this is true of Gary Johnson in 2016, for example, you can bet he's going to get about 3.3%. Just lop off a third. People will not, they'll freak out at the end, especially when you have close elections. And we've had a whole bunch in a row. So, yes, they will overstate it, but something has kind of relaxed in people's minds. And part of it, too, is that, Trump was the person everyone knew. He was the known quantity, and he's, dislocating, a disruptive force for good or for ill, depending on where you sit. But now we've had Joe Biden in office, and Joe Biden doesn't seem to be getting sharper with age or more popular in any way. He tanked with independents within 6 months of his presidency, and his poll ratings have stayed there. He's never particularly been a popular politician, which is an odd thing to consider, but it's actually true. So it says to me that usual tendency of okay, we'll have to go through and vote for the major party person, it's not quite the same this year.
Yeah, it does seem to feel just a little bit different this time around. And just real quickly, before I let you go, we got about a minute left. I wanted to get your take on this because obviously with these third-party candidates, ballot access has become a conversation, and the bar is so high. It's so expensive. There's so many legal challenges. Is this part of the problem, and is it controlled by the Republicans and the Democrats as kind of a two-headed monopoly? And is that something that needs to shift in our thinking? I've been dying to get your perspective on that.
Yes, it's incredibly onerous, and it's also incredibly arbitrary. The rules don't make sense. If you compare them from state to state in California, if you're an independent candidate, you want to run for president, cool. You have to get 219,000 signatures. Oh. And in 36 other states, less than 10,000. So it's totally random, and it could depend on party. They write the rules. The smaller parties have to deal with them, and they're going to use every lawfare type of weapon at their disposals, the two major parties, to keep the smaller parties off the ballot.
Yeah, I think that's an important discussion we got to get to in this country as well. If we want a different choice, we got to make sure there's a path for a different kind of choice, to be sure. Great piece. You should check this out today at Reason.com. Presidential ballot will be crowded with third-party candidates. Matt Welch, of course, is the editor-at-large for Reason. And Matt, as always, appreciate your perspective. Great insight. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, again, that's Matt Welch, editor-at-large at Reason, Reason.com. And I think there's so many interesting things in Matt's piece today as he talks through kind of where we are and why we are where we are, and the fact that we do have all of these independent third-party candidates out there in ways we haven't seen for a while, and some with some real strength to go with it. And again, whether you like their ideas or policies of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Or someone from the Green Party, they have a place, and they're doing the hard work and heavy lifting to get on the ballot. And it looks like many of them will be on the ballot in 40 or even all the way up to all 50 states. And so that's going to create a different kind of question and a different kind of conversation. And that's going to impact both the Democrats and the Republicans as we move through 2024. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
The last thing you want in the morning is more noise.
The day's just getting started. Maybe you're feeling a little anxious or overwhelmed, and it's not even 8 yet.
So catching up on important news stories, some sense of weather and traffic, it shouldn't be stressful.
Get a wrap on the day ahead from smart, inviting voices who know you're trying to ease in.
Do you love a rainy day?
I do, actually.
I do too.
Tim and Amanda, mornings from 5 to 9. They have you covered on KSL News Radio.
They say when you pick up one end of the stick, you pick up the other, and that's so true when starting a positive journey, like what I've experienced as I've lost over 60 pounds in 4.5 months with Sota weight loss. Yeah, 60. When I finally committed to changing my health through Sota, which, by the way, is spelled S-O-T-A and stands for state of the art, I suddenly felt freed. From day one, I was no longer embarrassed about how my body looked, and I started resisting that urge to cover or camouflage it like anyone who's been overweight knows what I'm talking about. Why? Because I knew it was going to work, and I wasn't going to look like this for much longer. And I don't. Someone else who knows what I'm talking about is Rosie, a fellow Sota client like me. Rosie joined up with her mom, and now she's down 50 pounds.
I came back home from a 2-week trip, and everybody was like, in awe. They were like, wow, you look really great. You look terrific. You look completely different. I haven't turned into a new person, but I think I'm finding the best version of myself.
So make 2024 the year you finally let go of that weight for good. Go to SotaWeightLoss.com, S-O-T-A weightloss.com. Sota stands for, say it with me, state of the art.
Les Olson IT is now a Rico Graphic Arts and Production Systems dealer. Rico chose Les Olson because of our reputation for superior service and national recognition. Les Olson IT chose Rico Graphics because they're the best value compared to other commercial-grade printers. Rico excels in high volume, high speed, high resolution, and offers an exciting 5th color. Learn more at lesolson.com.
Les Olson IT.
When you choose Performance Automotive in Bountiful, you're choosing selection, convenience, and exceptional service. 4 locations: Performance Ford Lincoln, Performance Honda, Performance Toyota, and Ford Truck Country. All dedicated to delivering you the best auto experience anywhere. Looking for your first car? Maybe you want rugged power or the stylish ride of your dreams. New or used. See it all at PerformanceBountiful.com. PerformanceBountiful.com.
These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
What's up? I'm tired of feeling so bloated. That used to be me. Then I got this. Align Bloating Relief plus Food Digestion. A probiotic, right? Yeah, it works naturally with your gut to help soothe occasional bloating and gas. Plus, it has vitamin B12 to aid digestion by helping convert food to cellular energy. 2 benefits, 1 capsule.
Align Bloating Relief plus Food Digestion from the #1 doctor-recommended probiotic brand. Get $5 off at AlignProbiotics.com.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. Listen, we're fiduciaries. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. That's 888-999-6370. 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. Now, imagine how that would be if you could actually retire 3 to 5 years sooner than your plan was. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan, taking into consideration any rental properties that you have, any pension income that you have, your Social Security. Listen, we put that all together for you in writing. It will allow us to build your income based on inflation. You know, inflation has been rapidly rising. You and I both need a plan that whatever we start out our income at, in 5 or 10 years, we're going to need 40% more income. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370, or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.
Any Hour Services can help you make sure your furnace keeps you warm this winter. Whether you need a tune-up, a repair, or a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
Tim and Amanda.
Do I look forward to reporting the news? Yes, insofar as it helps me understand what's happening.
We know that it's important information that's going to impact people's lives, and so that makes the job of reporting the news that day easier.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Maria Shilaos. First, a man extradited from Scotland to face rape charges in Utah finally had his first court appearance today. Nicholas Rossi continues to insist that that's not his name. Second, UDOT says that they haven't had to use nearly as much money to clear roads this winter, which could give them some wiggle room to complete other projects. Third, federal investigators say 4 bolts were missing from a door plug that blew off a Boeing jet last month. They released their preliminary report today. Right now in downtown Salt Lake City, 54 degrees under mostly cloudy skies. And back to Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and it's always interesting to me. We get so caught up in all the things that are going on and the things that we see on big headlines or all the big battles that we see in our nation's capital. But when you look to the Utah delegation, they spend the vast majority of their time focused on things that impact the vast majority of Utahns. I know that's a radical concept, but it's sort of the way things roll. And there's actually something coming up that we all need to be aware of, especially if you've dealt with trying to get a passport as a Utahn over the last little while. It's not been an easy task. And the Utah delegation has gotten together to do something about it. And joining us on the line from our nation's capital, Utah Senior Senator Mike Lee. Senator Lee, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks so much, Boyd. Good to be with you as always.
So give us some perspective here. We've heard a lot, even here at the station, about people struggling with that passport process over the last several years, really. It seems like there's been such a bog down in terms of getting things done. Tell us what you and the other members of the Utah delegation have seen and then what you've done together to do something about it.
About 10 months ago, I joined up with the other members of Utah's congressional delegation, House and Senate. We reached out to Secretary of State Tony Blinken and made some requests for help regarding what the State Department could do to expand passport services and accessibility, hoping for something like a passport office, an in-person passport option for people in Utah. And in time, we would love to have that. And but in the shorter term, we're happy that they'll be hosting a series of passport fairs this coming week throughout Utah. We've got one on Tuesday, February 13th in Ogden, one on Wednesday, Valentine's Day, February 14th in West Jordan, another one in Orem on Thursday, February 15th, and then the following day, February 16th in Salt Lake, and another one at that same day on Saturday, the 17th of February in Lehi. So this is going to be great. Between those passport fairs and the great work that my staff and my Utah casework team has alone helped process over 600 passports for Utah residents just in 2023 alone. We do our best to keep up with the demands, but having these folks locally, even for a week, it can be a big benefit.
Yeah, no question. And on Wednesday, the 14th, nothing says Valentine's Day like getting your passport or getting your passport updated, to be sure. And one of the interesting things that I think a lot of people don't recognize, especially your other colleagues there in Washington, D.C., is that, Utah really is not just this crossroads to the west, but a crossroads to the world. And so passports have become a real big deal in terms of all the international business that takes place here in the state of Utah and all those who come here to the state of Utah. Give us a sense in terms of your casework team. These are the unsung heroes, I think, of Senate and congressional offices who do a lot of that hard work and heavy lifting far away from cameras and microphones, but who really help the people of the state of Utah. Tell us what they do in this process.
Yeah, so my casework team is fantastic. I've got a small handful of professionals in my Salt Lake office who help people with things like this. And very often, when we get the call, in many circumstances, most circumstances, people just handle it the regular way and don't necessarily need to involve the help of their senator or their representative in it. But very often, the cases where we get brought in or where somebody realizes at the last minute, I can't even tell you how many times a year this happens, where I personally get a call from somebody who's on their way to the airport. They've got a trip that's been planned for a year, going to Mexico or Europe or some other place. And suddenly one family member lost their passport, or another family didn't realize that their passport had expired, or another one that's especially tricky that I got just a couple weeks ago. somebody's passport has not yet expired. It's still valid. It will still be valid by the time the trip is complete. But certain countries, particularly in Europe, won't let you in if your passport is going to be expiring within a few months. And so in those circumstances, we have to work with them to try to figure out how best to expedite the process of getting a passport. And very often we set up appointments on very short notice for people to go to Denver or San Francisco, San Diego, one of the other places in the country where we have passport offices, and we can get it taken care of that way. But, my constituent service team is second to none, and they've grown very accustomed to hearing from me and constituents all over the state at very odd hours with urgent requests, and they've done a great job helping them.
Yeah, fantastic. And we do hope that one day we will have one of those offices here in the state of Utah. But as you mentioned, for now, coming up next week, and we'll post this. I know this is posted on your website as well, Senator. These dates starting on Tuesday the 13th, running all the way through Saturday the 17th across the state. An opportunity for you to just go in. You can get an appointment. You can take in the things that you need in terms of photos and ID. And either get a new passport or renew a passport. All of those things can be done with this great tag team that's been done by Senator Lee's office and all of the Utah delegation combined. Really some great work there. Senator, obviously on a day like today, a lot of other things going on in Washington. And I wanted to focus for a minute on the bill that got revealed late on Sunday. And less about the politics of it all and more about the process of it all. You have been adamant over your time in the Senate that bills need to be done in the light of day, not but with a small group behind closed doors. When it comes to immigration, border, even things like aid to Ukraine and Israel, what is it that is going to get us to that space where we can actually have the Senate be the Senate again and let Congress be Congress again and actually get to good policy work in our country?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it helps to have a process. We really do need what is referred to longingly as regular order, which simply means to negotiate a bill not behind closed doors for months at a time, keeping the text secret until the last possible minute before an artificially created and contrived deadline put together by the Senate majority and minority leader, but in the light of day with enough time for people to read the bill and then decide what amendments they want to file and then offer those amendments and debate those amendments and pass them or not pass them before they move to final passage of the bill. This is the way that it ought to operate. Unfortunately, politics got the better of us here, and it's led to a lot of excessive speaking, you might say a lot of garrulous overkill along the way because we haven't had text. And so people resorted to speculating based on what little we were told along the way as it was being drafted. But in the course of this, I can't speak for what the Democrats in the Senate were being told as their negotiators were going through this, but we knew next to nothing for the first 2 or 3 months this was being negotiated. We were constantly asking for it. We were also constantly raising suggestions of certain bare minimum features that needed in the bill. Many of us were of the opinion that the bill ought to at least start with an effort to include the most critical elements of a bill called H.R. 2, which has been passed by the House of Representatives to improve border security, and then on top of that to add some features that would condition the release of Ukraine funding, perhaps in stages, on the basis of achieved border security metrics, benchmarks that once fulfilled would say, okay, now you can release the next tranche of money to Ukraine. Had it done that, as many, if not most, members of the Senate Republican Conference had suggested, we'd be in a very different position today. But unfortunately, our requests, which we repeated often, were left unheeded. So as a result, we were faced with a predictable, foreseeable, and in fact foreseen result of a bill coming forward at 7 p.m. on Sunday night. The first time we had ever seen it. 370 pages long, and this is immigration overhaul text in particular is very, very dense stuff with a lot of cross-references. But already, within the first 3 or 4 hours of reading through it, I'm still scouring the provisions, still finding new Easter eggs in it. A lot of them are subtle and don't jump out at you immediately.
Yeah.
Still finding things. But this is all the foreseeable, in fact, foreseen result of the negotiators not communicating with the people they claim to be negotiating on behalf of.
Yeah.
And when they grow that far apart over 4 months in what they stand for, it should come as a shock to no one that it failed. My fear here, Boyd, is that this was political from the very beginning.
Yeah.
This was not about finding good policy. This was about scoring a political point somewhere in a way that was not even consistent with what most Senate Republicans wanted. This could have been done the right way. Had it been done the right way, I think most, if not all, members of the Senate Republican Conference could have seriously considered voting for it.
Yeah.
But what they produced was very different than that because the process they used was a bad one, a corrupted one from the outset.
Yeah, and that's what we got to get back to, that regular order. Utah Senior Senator Mike Lee, thanks for weighing in today, both on what's happening with the border bill, but also this very important coming up next week as it relates to getting your passport right here in the state of Utah. We'll post those dates. Great work by the Constituent Services and the entire Utah delegation. More Inside Sources coming up next.
2:31 at KSL News Radio. Good afternoon. I'm Maria Shilaos. KSL's top story this hour. The man accused of faking his own death and then fleeing to Scotland to escape a rape charge has appeared in a Utah County court today.
I'm not Nicholas Rossi for the record, but I have received documents.
That is the sound of Nicholas Rossi denying that he's Nicholas Rossi, speaking through an oxygen mask. Rossi's appearance today was mostly procedural. He's due back in court next month. Is crime really down 32% in the Ballpark neighborhood? The police chief says yes, but the community council chair says there's more going on. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobabe has the story.
The chair of the Ballpark Community Council, Amy Hawkins, says violent crime is down, like the chief says, but property crime is up. That basically makes for a 0% change when you look at the overall crime in the area. But Hawkins tells KSL's David Dujanovic several businesses where crime was flourishing have changed, and that has made a huge difference in just the last few months.
Hawkins says she's optimistic that this change will last. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Federal investigators say 4 bolts were completely missing from the door plug that blew out mid-flight last month. They finished their preliminary probe into the Boeing jetliner mishap. Investigators believe those bolts were missing before the plane took off from Portland. Pilots were forced to make a harrowing emergency landing with a hole in the side of the plane. Your money at this moment, the Dow closed up 141 points. It ended at 38,521. S&P up by 11. NASDAQ up by 11 as well. Coming up, more valley rain and mountain snow. We'll check the forecast next. KSL News Time, 2:33.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
This joyful sound is the No More Chemo bell at Intermountain Health St. George Hospital. And it means that Sarah Parker beat cancer. It also means her doctor spotted it early enough to treat, and that her oncologist helped her fight it every step of the way. It means that her nurse helped her keep track of medicines, and that a case manager made the whole experience just a little bit easier. Every time we hear that bell, it reminds us that all things are possible when we work together. It reminds us of the power of we. Intermountain Health.
It's the dead of winter, and our friends at Advanced Window Products have a wonderful wintertime offer. This is Jeff Kaplan. If the cold is seeping into your house right now, Nate and Jake will give you $2,500 off on double-pane windows and the highest quality custom frames built right here in Utah. Any style, any color, and the $2,500 is atop their already low prices. See, they build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. So there's no middleman markup. At Advanced Window Products, they offer 0% financing. You can save now, pay later, so take advantage in the dead of winter while the wind is whistling and give your home, your number one asset, a fresh new look. Plus, you save money on heating and air conditioning, so much so the energy companies offer rebates. Buy local. Their factory's right here in Salt Lake City. Save an extra $2,500 off the best windows and frames in Utah. 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100 or visit advancedwindowsusa.com.
Traffic and weather together. It's brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. What's happening, Ricky Meese?
Looking at a good drive on the Valley freeways and the main secondaries. Remember, we have a traffic light flashing in all directions in Draper and will remain so for the next few days due to repair work at 1300 East and Highland Drive. For a limited time, open a 9-month certificate from Cyprus Credit Union and get 5.6% APY. Learn more at any branch or visit cypruscu.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
We'll see valley rain, mountain snow along the Wasatch Front this afternoon and evening. That will continue through the day tomorrow with up to 20 inches of snow in the high mountain areas. Snow could reach the valley floors by Friday. Right now, cloudy and 54 degrees. I'm Maria Shilaos from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We are Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, Americans are not pleased with the state of the economy. No amount of pinky promises from the administration seem to be changing that particular fact. President Biden obviously inherited a very fickle economy in the middle of a pandemic. And then pushed it to all kinds of different places and spaces. And, of course, now we are way over the 34 trillion in debt. Deficit spending continues. And, of course, we've got all kinds of things with inflation and prices, and the list goes on and on. And so as we look at how we got here and how much of this was economic policy, how much of this was the administration's strategy, and how much of it was just a communication game in terms of where we really are and where's the disconnect between Bidenomics and where the American people actually are, because that seems to be what the president is struggling with at the moment. And to help us break all of that down, Peter Suderman, features editor at Reason, Reason.com, has a great piece on the bankruptcy of Bidenomics. And Peter, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So dive into this for us. You did a great job of kind of moving through what the president has been saying, what kind of the communication strategy has been, the policy pieces, and where we are today.
Yeah, so one of the big problems for the Biden administration politically has been that people really don't trust Joe Biden on the economy. And you see that in the most recent polls, which show that there's about a 20-point gap between Biden and Trump in terms of perceptions of how Biden is handling the economy versus how Trump would handle the economy, with Trump being the one who people trust by a significant margin there. And so over the last year or so, starting really last summer, Biden went on a tour of the country trying to convince people that actually the economy was great, and not just that the economy was great, but that it was great because of the policies that he passed. And he focused on three big pieces of legislation: the American Rescue Plan, which was the $2 trillion all-Democrat plan that was passed just a couple of months after Biden took out, maybe a couple of weeks, just very shortly after Biden took office in 2021, and then the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022, as well as the CHIPS and Science Act, which is a big sort of industrial policy bill that subsidizes stuff like computer chip manufacturing and then other manufacturing. And the case that Biden made was that those policies amounted to Bidenomics. And that was sort of an interesting concession up front, because Bidenomics had initially started as a label from Biden's critics in places like the Wall Street Journal. And Biden was like, no, actually, this is Bidenomics and it's good. And if you look at the actual effects of those bills, at best, I think you can say, well, they put some money in people's pockets right when Biden came into office. The American Rescue Plan did send out checks to most families, to most families in the country, basically everyone earning under about $150,000. But then those checks, what did they do? Well, they gave people more money and they swelled bank accounts, but that helped contribute to inflation, which is one of the big things that people don't like about the economy. And then you get to the next set of bills. Well, you have the Inflation Reduction Act. A year after that passed, Biden himself said, look, most of this money, a big chunk of this money, it's not about inflation at all. Actually, it's just about spending a whole lot of money on climate change policy and on incentivizing stuff like electric vehicles, that sort of thing. And yet, there's just not a lot to show for that. In fact, by the end of last year, you saw reports that Biden was complaining that there weren't big infrastructure projects for him to stand in front of and campaign on, as he campaigns for president this year, and that there was billions of dollars in that in those bills that were allocated for things like EV chargers across the country. Only 2 states have even started building those things. Most states haven't even submitted plans yet. There were, by Thanksgiving of last year, none of those chargers had been built. I think by the end of the year, there were maybe a handful of them, 4 or 5, but still essentially nothing to show for billions and billions of dollars being spent. And so what Biden is telling us is that Bidenomics was an agenda of huge amounts of spending that there's just not a lot to show for. And I think it's really kind of revealing that Biden was bragging not so much about what he actually did, but just about the money that he spent. And that reflects so much of Joe Biden's approach to the economy. It's not about actually making anything better. It's just, well, we put together some really big bills with some really big dollar signs. And that's what we did. And what do you have to show for it? Not a whole lot.
Yeah, and the interesting thing that I think they're struggling with now, both in terms of we've been really breaking down the communication strategy today, and both parts of it, both from the White House and the administration, the governing component to it, as well as the obvious campaign side of it in a re-election year. And both of those groups are really struggling mightily with this disconnect. They've had the president, and you pointed this out in your piece, give some pretty fiery speeches defending some of the big spending, and then some trying to tout, some of the numbers. They're trying to really speak to the American people as if they were economists, not consumers. And it seems to me that disconnect is what both the administration and the campaign are struggling with rolling into 2024.
It's really telling if you go back to last summer when Biden started giving these speeches in which he started talking about how great Bidenomics was. The first big speech that he delivered, there was, as is often the case, there was a memo prepared by the administration, sent out to reporters, saying, well, this is Bidenomics. This is what we're going to talk about. This is a preview of the speech. That's a pretty common thing. But what was notable about it was that memo was written by members of the communications team, not people from the economics, not his economic advisors, not his policy advisors. Bidenomics, the speech-making part of it, the stuff that we have heard from President Biden over the past 9 months or so, all of that was just a messaging play. It was just an attempt to sort of say, well, actually the things we did that you already know about, these laws have been on the books for a year or 2 years or more, right? Like actually all that stuff was good. And you're wrong about what's going on in the economy. And, I think you can actually make a case that there are some good things happening in the American economy right now. Yeah. The job market's pretty good. Inflation is certainly way down from its peak. But Biden wanted to say that, no, actually all these big spending policies, that was Bidenomics. And those things had contributed to making life better for Americans. And then the evidence just isn't really there.
Yeah.
And again, it's so telling when you have these reports coming out starting in December of last year that Biden himself is frustrated with the lack of progress, that the factories aren't being built, that the bridges aren't being built, that the EV chargers that were supposed to be everywhere, that there's only a handful of them, and that most states are just way, way behind on even getting their plans together for this sort of thing. Yeah. And it's really indicative, I think, of a kind of a contradiction right now in liberal policymaking is that on the one hand, they say they want to build things and they want to spend money to build things. And then they bog down any effort to build stuff in a huge array of rules and regulation that don't just make it expensive. They just make it, in some cases, they make it nearly impossible because it takes so long.
Yeah, no question. Peter Suderman, features editor at Reason. Great piece. Is there any there? That's going to be the big debate, the big question. Peter, thanks for breaking it all down for us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll step aside for one last break. Final thoughts on Inside Sources coming up next.
Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates this weekend only. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Getting your biggest tax refund from Jackson Hewitt can lead to some spirited reactions.
Jackson Hewitt!
Jackson Hewitt is so sure that you'll get your biggest refund that if they don't, you get your money back plus $100.
Jackson Hewitt!
And Jackson Hewitt also guarantees the accuracy of your return for life. So don't just sit there. For your biggest refund guaranteed, walk into a Jackson Hewitt today and dance out Jackson Hewitt! Yeah!
Now, during Staples Print Big Sale, get $20 off your print purchase of $100 or more, $50 off your print purchase of $200 or more, and $100 off your print purchase of $300 or more. So the more you print at Staples, the more you save. To demonstrate, print at Staples, you save. But if you print at Staples, you save. See how that works? Staples Print Big Sale. Print more, save more. Up to $100. Ends 2/10. Visit staples.com/print for details.
Going to a Jazz game is more fun together. Host an unforgettable night at Delta Center with colleagues, friends, families, whoever. Group tickets are the best way to get everyone together to cheer on the Jazz. Pick from a variety of options for seating, dining, and game day experiences. Start planning your big night at the game by calling 801-355-DUMP, emailing groupsales@utahjazz.com, or simply visiting utahjazz.com/tickets.
Higher taxes, soaring inflation, record low interest rates, and the skyrocketing cost of healthcare. The list goes on. Retiring successfully today is a lot more complicated than ever before. Learn how you could tackle the biggest challenges that you'll face in retirement today. Don't miss a special edition of Retirement Solutions Radio. It's this Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, right here on KSL News Radio 1027.
Imagine it's the final game of the season, but your symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome with constipation, or IBS-C, are making a comeback. What should you do? Keep managing your constipation with belly pain the same old way? Or try getting ahead of your symptoms by talking to your doctor about Linzess, linaclotide. Linzess is a prescription medicine that treats IBS-C in adults. It's not a laxative. It's a once-daily pill that helps you get ahead of your symptoms. It's proven to help you have more frequent and complete bowel movements and helps relieve overall abdominal symptoms, belly pain, discomfort, and bloating. These symptoms were studied in combination, not individually.
Do not give Linzess to children less than 2. It may harm them. Do not take Linzess if you have a bowel blockage. Get immediate help if you develop unusual or severe stomach pain, especially with bloody or black stools. The most common side effect is diarrhea, sometimes severe. If it's severe, stop taking Linzess and call your doctor right away. Other side effects include gas, stomach area pain, and swelling.
Imagine, what could relief from IBS-C mean for you? Talk to your doctor and say yes to Linzess. Learn more at linzess.com or call 1-800-LINZESS.
Common Spirit Health. Hospitals, clinics, and caregivers all connected to advance healthcare in Colorado, Kansas, and Utah. Healthcare with human kindness is here. Hello, human kindness.
Are you looking to get a COVID-19 booster to stay healthy this cold and flu season? If you join the Beehive study, you'll have the chance to receive up to $550 for getting a booster and completing weekly COVID tests and brief surveys about your health. Don't want to get a COVID-19 booster? That's okay too. You can still join the Beehive study and receive up to $550 for completing the weekly COVID tests and surveys. Help advance research at the University of Utah while taking care of yourself this season. Call 801-203-0320 or email beehivestudy@utah.edu to learn more. You can also visit the study website at beehivestudy.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Maria Shilaos. First, the NTSB says 4 bolts that should have secured the door plug that blew off a Boeing jet last month were missing before the plane ever took off. Second, the Federal Trade Commission says it's seeing an uptick in romance scams ahead of Valentine's Day. And third, UDOT says they have spent 15% less on road clearing this winter than last year. Right now, mostly cloudy in downtown Salt Lake City and 53 degrees. And back to Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, you know, one of the questions that I get asked most often is, with all the noise, all the chatter out there, how do I find the truth? How do I make sure what I'm consuming, whether it's news or politics or information, how do I know it's good and it's solid? How do I avoid being manipulated or controlled by those who want to manipulate or control, especially your emotions, to get you engaged and energized and maybe even a little angry or frustrated, usually to have you make a donation to a campaign? And so how do we do that? How do we go about that? And so I want to go back to a couple of things today that I think are really important for us, especially the further we roll into this presidential cycle, the more important it's going to be for each of us to be able to step back from the headlines, look underneath, ask the good questions, do some good assessment, and then decide. Because that's our job. That's what we have to do. My job on this show is not to tell you how to think, what to believe, what to pursue, who to support. Not my job. My job is to serve up a lot of information to you that you can think about, that you can stay curious about, that you can challenge and question, and then make a good decision for yourself. That's the way it's supposed to work. That's how dialogue happens. That's how you get to the higher ground. That's how you actually get to common ground, by the way, whether you're doing it listening to this radio program, whether you're doing it sitting in a meeting at work or in your community. It's the same process. And so we have to make sure we start with good information so that we can get to good inspiration, and then we can have better conversation as it relates to the important issues of the day. So a couple of things I want you to be thinking about because we've seen a lot of it just over the course of the last week. Things are really starting to heat up as it relates to the political side of things. And so what should you be looking at? What should you be doing? First, I do say you always got to stay radically curious. Even if you completely disagree with somebody on a particular issue, stay radically curious and ask yourself, I wonder why she thinks that's the best idea. I wonder why he believes that's good policy. I wonder why she thinks that will solve that particular problem. Stay radically curious and ask good questions. And not just good questions, ask good follow-up questions, because that'll give you more insight, if nothing else, into where they're coming from and why they believe what they believe. And usually in that process, it's much easier to ferret out what's true, what's false, what's hype and spin, and what's reality. But you have to stay radically curious, even with those you disagree with. I thought in President Biden's speech today, there were some very strong things. You all know I'm an equal opportunity offender, and I'm an equal opportunity commender. And I think there were some things that were commendable in the president's speech today. And I think there were some things that needed to be condemned. Like the president saying, hey, look, the New York Times headline says what I just said. You should believe that. Or that the Wall Street Journal said this. President of the United States should not have to say that. You should be able to trust it and not just hype and spin. So stay radically curious. Always make sure you're cross-referencing things, especially with the more technical it gets, the more into the weeds it gets. A lot of things are painted or scripted or crafted for very short attention spans. And that's all of us, because we're doom scrolling through our social media feeds. We're getting our news off of strange places, and we're going through at a very high level, very surfacey. And so it's easy for people to just plant a nice bumper sticker slogan in your brain that starts to drive your behavior. So always cross-reference it. Always check your sources. Double down on that for sure. And I think one area where this is particularly important is when it comes to polling. You know, it used to be that polls were so hard to do and took so long to do and were so expensive that we rarely had them. So when we did have them, you had to kind of pay attention. Now I get in my inbox, I get like 17 different polls a day telling me all the things. And most of them aren't worth the digital space they occupy in my email box because they're not done with discipline. They're done to produce the result they want as opposed to what is actually reality. And it's why so many polls have been so far off, both in terms of election, but more importantly, just public sentiment in general. I love this example. My friend Scott Rasmussen, who is a counterpoller, which is really the way we need to be going about it to figure out what the American people really think. But there was a poll not too long ago that said the most desirable job in America was to be an actuary. Now, I would wager most Americans don't even know what an actuary is, let alone it being the most desirable job to have. Now, in that same poll, that same survey, being a professional baseball player was ranked 279 in most desirable jobs in America. So think about that. How in the world could an actuary be the most desirable job and being a pro baseball player be at 279? Well, it's all about how you do the poll. And in this particular poll, if you worked inside versus working outside, that was a benefit. If you could work during the day and you didn't have to work at night, like at a baseball game, that was better. They even scored things like, well, once people make over $70,000 a year, then the added marginal benefit to that is very small. So it was a small factor that you could earn millions of dollars every year as a professional baseball player as opposed to being an actuary. And on it went. And so on one hand, the poll was accurate based on the criteria that they had crafted. But I don't think there's anybody in the country who actually believes it wouldn't be really cool to be a professional baseball player and make millions of dollars to do it, as opposed to being an actuary sitting in an office. So it all depends on what goes in and how things are done. One of the other things you have to really keep in mind, and watch this very closely, when you see polls that start to come out about races now, whether that's for governor, mayor, or whether it's a Senate or a House race, presidential race, always look and see who did they poll. And from now until November, any poll that is done with registered voters is not going to be very accurate. It just proves out. They're much easier to do, and that's why many polling firms do them, because it's much easier to get a registered voter than it is to get a likely voter. And what determines a likely voter? It's not self-proclaimed. It's you actually had to vote in the last election cycle or the last two election cycles. And so people who show up to vote and who do actually vote, it's much more accurate to get a polling number. So be very careful. If you see registered voter poll, you can say, probably not a lot of weight in that one. Probably not a lot of substance in that one. If it says likely voter, then they've done a little more homework. It's been a little harder to get the data to actually produce the result. So watch the polling data. What is it trying to tell you? What is it actually saying? Because so often what happens is it ends up with someone trying to control you or manipulate you to think either somebody has won the race or somebody is out of the race, or this initiative's going to pass or this initiative's going to fail. And they're trying to get to a result as opposed to informing you so that you, the voter, can make a better decision. That's what it should be about. And we see a lot of this where people do just get a little sideways because, again, polling has become a very difficult thing because we don't have landlines anymore and people don't sit at home at 6 p.m. To have dinner and then answer the phone when the pollster calls. Those days are long, long, long gone. But it requires all of us to look a little closer to what we're consuming and, more importantly, what we're repeating when it comes to polling. Polling can give us a good perspective, can give us a good perception of public sentiment, but we got to dig in and make sure they're asking the right questions in the right way so that we can make the right determination for ourselves, not what they're trying to manipulate us to do. All right, that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I am Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.